Sunshine Coast, welcome. We're here today with Steve Dickson MP for Buderim. Steve, thanks for meeting with us.
Mate, always good to see you, Matt.
So, look, today we're here to talk to you about road widths and the tennis game between local government and state government on why roads are currently so narrow and how we could potentially, look at making them wider into the future. So, we've got a little bit of a standard pattern. It's the questions have kind of changed over time, but the first one is, do you think, as a resident of the Sunshine Coast, that new development road widths are delivering roads that are wide enough for need?
Matt, it's a pretty complex question. There's no one right answer.
Okay.
It's just when councils, and I used to be the chairman of town planning for the Verge Shire, so Sippy Downs is probably a great example. People go, the roads are very narrow in Sippy Downs. The roads are very narrow in Sippy Downs because that was approved by a court order.
Right.
There's your problem.
Okay.
Because it went before the council refused it, and then it went before the Land and Environment Court, negotiated outcome, where the developer pretty well got what he wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Smaller roads, so it's cheaper for him to build the estate. They all tell you that we're doing this because we want affordable housing. Let's just say that's a bit of a fabrication of the truth, because it's about making money. And it's not the development industry's fault. That's what they do. They're not in the business to give you free kicks or to give anybody a free house. That's not what the development industry is about. It's about delivering a state in this particular instance, and that was Sippy Downs. But then you have other estates like Brightwater, or just estates that are coming out of the ground, Palmview, Caloundra South. That's where negotiation should occur between the local authority and the developer when they do a major development, and they negotiate the size of the sewer pipes, the size of the road network, the footpaths. There are certain criteria to follow, but these are negotiated outcomes between the developer and the council.
Yes.
And if they don't agree, off you go to court.
Now, when we put this to council representatives, to councillors, pretty much the generic response is, yes, they've all said we should have wider roads in the developments, but they hit that ball back to the state government that when they have challenged that in the past, that it then goes through a court process. That court process falls back to the standard mandated minimum, which is generally what is delivered. Now, very interestingly enough, when we interviewed Andrew Powell, who from our understanding is the Shadow Minister for Local Government and Roads and Transport, he said that no one from local government, to his knowledge, has ever made any overtures to the state government that they want those minimums increased so that when developers do take it to court, a wider road is delivered. So we find that interesting because obviously to have more houses in a development is ultimately in the council's best interests. So we get into this kind of dangerous area where local government blames state, as we've said, state puts it back on local, but from what we can tell, local government really hasn't done anything to deliver wider roads, despite saying they should be wider, and it's the fault of the state government. What's your thoughts on all of that?
Matt, it again is a reasonably complex answer because it gets down to negotiation about a master plan development.
Yes.
Negotiation between the council and the state. The state between the local developer, I should say, and the council.
Okay.
Those powers have been devolved to the local authorities for them to come to agreements with developers. That's their job.
Yes.
They go to the state last after all this is done, which are concurrence agencies, and say, main roads, are you happy? Environment, are you happy? All these different branches of government. Majority of the time, it's a tick in the box, where sometimes it's not a tick in the box, and it shouldn't be. I mean, you want the widest possible roads. I remember I was the councillor for Sippy Downs after it had been approved by a court order, and University Way, there's 4 lanes, 2 on each side of the road. People used to park on the side of the road, which consequently cut it down to 1 lane.
Yes.
So I built these little car parks on the side of the road and got all the cars off the side of the road because I had to retrofit a development that they'd got wrong. Council have always got the opportunity to get it right, and that's what they should do. It's about putting hard conditions on the developer or letting the developer get away with anything he likes.
Yeah.
The second option's not a good one.
And look, we start to move into the kind of, I don't know how to put this, the dirty little details. Now, can I ask, how long ago were you retrofitting streets in Sippy Downs?
When I first got elected, I got elected to be the representative in 2000, and that had been approved in a quarter, I think it was in the late 90s. I mean, there was a whole lot of stuff. The lake system down there was totally stuffed up.
Yeah.
The road networks were too small. A whole lot of things. I mean, Chancellor State School, you know, what a debacle. You've got all this university accommodation where they've only got to provide one car park for a 4-bedroom unit, which isn't real clever because there's normally 4 cars involved. So that cluttered up all the car parking at the school, and we just continually kept changing and changing that. It's still not perfect today, but I think it's a lot better than it used to be.
Yeah, but look, so getting back to that point, 10 years ago, 17 years ago, you retrofitted streets in Sippy Downs because the roads weren't wide enough. Right now, council is looking at retrofitting streets right across the Sunshine Coast to allow for 2 wheels up on the Verge. Okay, so 17 years have gone by. Council's out finding people, so they know there's an issue because people don't need to park on the Verge if there's enough parking. Okay, so we're now looking at retrofitting at the expensive ratepayers streets right across the Sunshine Coast. Now, when I talk to, say, one councillor, Councillor McCain, I spoke to recently, and she was saying, look, we're probably looking at 10, 20, 30 years until we're able to deliver the public transport that's needed, which was in terms of having roads that narrow. So roads were originally designed to be that narrow because we're going to have this amazing infrastructure for public transport. We don't have that infrastructure there. So the roads that are being delivered are narrow enough if we didn't have a lot of cars, but we do have a lot of cars. And we're stuck in this situation where, as we've just kind of highlighted by this conversation, 17 years on, local government's retrofitting streets, and the core issue is roads aren't wide enough. So I suppose the real question is not really for you as at a state level, but why has council perpetuated this for 17 years? I mean, at least in the Sunshine Coast example.
Matt, again, it's a complex answer. We're not London, we're not Tokyo. We do not have adequate public transport here. Bottom line, everybody gets around by a car. The bus route here in Buderim has been extended from half-hourly routes to hourly routes. Is that good for my local people? No, it's not. I think it's pathetic. I think it's terrible. Council collect transport levies. They collect a whole lot of different levies. I mean, there are benefits from more houses being built on the Sunshine Coast, as you pointed out a lot earlier, but as far as public transport, pathetic. We do not have a good public transport regime here on the coast, and we need better. Should roads be wider? Absolutely. It should be mandatory that roads are wide in every estate. When you go to country areas, you see it all the time. We used to have it here, but somehow, some way, the development industry's got extremely clever and they build cheap, small roads. That's not what you should do. You should build adequate roads that can cater to the amount of traffic that's going to be utilised in those areas. The next thing you're going to see happen over a period of time, as you're seeing down at Brightwater, a school was designed down there for 750 kids. They got it wrong. There's over 1,000 now, so there's not adequate car parking. The roads aren't big enough. More people are coming to that area. The mathematics was wrong. So how often are we going to get it wrong? Like you pointed out, 17 years since I became a councillor. It was wrong before I started. It's still wrong now that I'm with the state government. We just got to get smarter. Build the roads to cater for what's needed. It's that simple.
Yeah. So on that point, moving forward and getting these roads to be wider. Now we're hoping to meet with the mayor. We have invited him. He had a busy schedule. We're going to be re-inviting him again to do an interview with us to talk about this because the blame game's not good enough, right? And something needs to happen. So the other flow-on thing from this, I think we've covered that now. Now, the other flow-on thing, apart from retrofitting, another expense, apart from the inconvenience, which is another issue that's suffered by ratepayers, voters and so on, is now the implementation of paid parking. So we've got council out now with a draft parking management plan. Now, why do we need so many paid parking stations? Well, from the outside and moving through this investigation, it's because there's not enough delivered in the first place. And to be seen to be doing something, it looks like the council's saying, look, we've got all this, have your input and tell us what you think, but there's not enough parking because roads aren't wide enough, because the foresight is not put in when we're developing areas. So like with the new town centre coming, there should be a reasonable allocation of public parking available for people to move into that area. Yet paid parking is flourishing everywhere. And it seems to come back down to this dollars. Same with developers. Developers have no real inclination to make roads wider because they're there to maximise returns to their stakeholders. And so they should. That's their business. But it's the role of local and state government, and especially from a planning perspective, as you pointed out, local government, to actually start delivering things that are going to hold capacity into the future. Now, what's your view on the current paid parking rollout across the coast?
Matt, I have a real problem with paid parking per se. This is my home. This is where I live. I've lived here for a very long time. I still want to be able to go down to Mooloolaba and take my family to the beach or take my relatives to the beach and not really have to stick my hand in my pocket and pay for parking. But I can imagine that day's coming very quickly, because the only way that you get people to park in paid parking stations is to meter everywhere.
Yes.
That's what's going to happen. When I was in council, the staff were trying to push paid parking at that stage, and that's between 2000 and 2006. This is a cash cow. It's going to make big heaps of money, but the cautionary note I will throw at council very, very clearly is that people can't afford to pay their power bills. They can't afford to pay their water bills. They can't afford the cost of living generally. We've got 35% of people in this country suffering mortgage stress. You really think they can now afford to pay paid car parking? I mean, seriously? You know, the economy's not doing it that great on a national basis. We're going okay here on the coast, but the housing bubble at some stage will burst. It's a secular thing. Right? It comes and it goes. It's good and it's bad. What we need to do is plan smart, have wider roads, cater for parking for those developments that are going to occur, and make the developer pay his way. You know, the developer's going to make a quid out of this at the end of the day. If it doesn't stack up, he won't do it.
Yes.
Pretty simple.
Yeah. And it just comes down to numbers, doesn't it?
Everything's about numbers in life, Matt. It's as I said, people can't afford to pay their bills these days. Things are pretty tough out there. You know, housing affordability, if people say the development to get these small blocks is about housing affordability, how come they're so expensive? You know, how come houses are still really dear? If it was about housing, they were talking about housing affordability between 2000 and 2006. Hasn't happened. And it's not going to happen because it's talk, and talk is cheap.
And look, disturbingly, that is still a response from certain representatives in council that the road widths are to contribute to better housing affordability. Yet, all of the state members we've interviewed, and all bar one of the councillors that we've interviewed, said it never has translated to more affordable housing.
Matt, I don't believe it's about local government, state government and federal government flogging each other. That's just ridiculous. You know, should never do that. I mean, you really want to take everybody on the journey with you, but to get a solution, you've got to understand the problem. And the problem is, this is about making sure the developer pays their way. You either let them off the hook or they pay their way. If you let them off the hook, you've got a car parking problem. Hence, this is where we are.
So, ultimately this comes down to local government needs to ensure that the infrastructure is delivered to suit ratepayers.
Well, it's the infrastructure agreement, Matt. This is what they do when you negotiate for master plan developments. You go through a process. Council have got many, many staff. The developers have got, you know, deep pockets and they want to do a development. You come in at this point and you meet a negotiated outcome. That's what planning is all about. So, you know, there should be prerequisite requirements. You're going to get X amount of houses on such a big chunk of dirt. The roads are going to be so wide, there's going to be so much car parking to cater for those developments. Not rocket science.
And simply put, again, coming back to what Andrew Powell said in his interview, if local government feels like it has been boxed into a corner and has to deliver roads of those widths and doesn't think that that is ample, they have an obligation to lobby state government to say, here's the issue, we want to deliver wider roads. Our ratepayers need it, the voters need it, and it hasn't happened. And that's where we kind of come back to at this point in time of what we've looked at. I mean,
Matt, the world continues to change. We can't change yesterday, but you can always change tomorrow. So I think the point you've made is very, very clear. If there is an issue as far as council is concerned, and they are worried that they're being restricted in some way or form by implementing these conditions on the development industry, ask for the rules to be changed, which I really don't believe that is the issue. I mean, you look at an area like Buderim. Buderim is an older town. It was discovered in 1862. You know, when this place was designed, it was for horse and carts. You know, one main drag going up the middle here. If we were all smart and we knew what we knew today, you'd have this road here and you'd have another one over the back that catered for traffic both ways.
Of course.
But there's houses all built through there. Now the place has continually grown, and this is happening right across the whole of the Sunshine Coast. We're very, very fortunate with the town called Santa and the corridors that we have for transport networks that they can be implemented, but it's about thinking smart. It's about understanding what the problem's going to be. The day will come where we will probably have driverless cars. The day will come where you're probably going to see people moving around in drones. I mean, technology will start to catch up with us, and there's a whole lot of if, buts and maybes out there. I don't know all the answers, but what I do know at the moment, you've got to deal with what you've got. And those negotiated outcomes between developer and council, they should be absolute paramount, and roads should be wide and adequate car parking should be put in place.
Steve, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it. And yeah,
Matt,
thank you.
Always a pleasure, mate. Be safe.
Cheers.
Good on you.